Two of us own Barrel Maker Printing, and we're based out of Chicago. Basically what we're going to talk about a little bit is being the company that you want to work for. In the screen printing industry, that means you know, getting to work like 14-hour days, 7 days a week, hearing customer complaints, misprints, fumes, spraying adhesive. So that's what we all dreamed of doing, right? So now that we get to live out our dreams, you know, sort of the premise of what we want to talk about is how to mold the business around essentially, you know, ourselves, right? How do you take like the components of this industry and all the things that you need to create a product and do it in a manner that still makes it so that you enjoy it and are entertained by it. So let's go. I'm going to just introduce us a little bit real quick if we go to the next slide. So Erin and I started Barrel Maker in 2009 in our apartment in Logan Square in Chicago. We started in our dining room with a silver press, thanks to Ryan over there. And
I like your hair back then.
Yeah, it was a lot cooler. You know? So yeah, we printed out of our apartment. We kind of got into printing on accident. We were, you know, sort of doing it as a joke, making some baby clothes. And it actually turned into a real business pretty organically. We moved into a warehouse space. We ended up with an automatic in this space. This is on the 3rd floor of an old warehouse building in Chicago. It was 120 degrees trying to print in there. It was a nightmare. You know, basically we moved from there down.
Or a dream, depending on
right.
how you're looking at it.
We're all living the dream here. So we ended up moving down to you know, the 3rd floor, kind of expanding within our building, and we outgrew our place in the city. And sorry, next slide. Here's where we're at now. So we have a little over like 13,000 square feet. We run 3 automatic presses, and now we're running pretty consistently 3 manual presses. We do about probably about 125 to 150 orders a week right now. So that's sort of where we're at. We print a lot of full color sim process type of work, a lot of like water-based discharge printing, and currently for the last 8 months or so, we have a contract now with a manufacturer of like rubber apparel. So we print around, I don't know exactly piece-wise, but around 10 to 15 skids of safety apparel a week. And it's all rubber and high visibility and kind of like specialty printing. Our slides aren't super organized, so yeah, this is our space. This is just some of the prints that we did. Yeah. Okay, here's our first topic. So one thing that actually happened in our transition, and Matt actually like asked me about this when we were talking during the break, which I thought was interesting, is he was like, hey, do you still have a lot of sort of gutter punk type people who work for you? I think when we started the business, I think naturally what happened is we would find sort of people who, you know, were like art students and like real, I don't know, they ended up all being like real punk rock and kind of weird, and those were the people who flocked to us and would help us work. Recently we moved out of the city when we got into a bigger space, and we've kind of restaffed. And the thing that I really realized in probably the last like couple months, and actually really heavily the last like couple weeks, is that we've really hired people lately based on their personality, not based on their past experience, not based on, you know, if they were a printer somewhere else, if they did art somewhere else, but based on like when we sat down with them and if we felt like they were someone that we wanted to work with. And I think after about a year ago, there was a period of time where I realized we had a lot of printers who were from other shops, right? We had a lot of people who on paper had a ton of experience, but they were boring as shit. Like, I hated going into production. I hated, you know, I didn't like being at work. It wasn't fun. See you around. So I had kind of this, when we moved and sort of had the opportunity to hire people again, I kept saying to everybody, we really need someone that's like, we need one of those like weirdos who's collecting bones in their pocket and like, you know, picking up like just weird, you know, we used to have like a hoarder in the shop, like anything that we tried to throw out, it would end up in these big piles. That's all. That was Martha. And so, you know, so what happened is we brought on, I think, 5 assistants, right? We brought them on as like print assistants, and we brought people on who, you know, some of them had experience, some didn't, but they were all like very, very interested. And what we've ultimately done with that, sort of our model has changed to where we're really finding out where people naturally fit in what they do best, right? So like, and I think we have a little bit more flexibility now than we used to because we're a bigger shop than we used to be. So like, you know, maybe a few years ago if we hired someone as a printer and they couldn't print, we were screwed. Now like we brought someone on who's a printer. She's not a very good printer, but we found out that in Reclaim, everything is spotless, everything is labeled perfectly. We got like, you know, all the newtons labeled for every screen, what job it's for. It's like, it's amazing, you know? So being able to kind of work within the people that we have and find those sort of like spots where it fits them, it makes them work better, right? They're happier. And for our company, we're starting to see, I think now we have the best staff that we've ever had. I think we have the best crew. I think everybody's like more of a team because they found the things that they're actually able to do well.
And it also allows them to build a career path right inside of Barrel Maker. Whereas, you know, if they're coming in and they're coming in and they have the set path, and then we give them our SOP, right? This is how you do that job. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and then we walk away and we want them to do step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, right? Well, instead of doing that, we kind of just rotated people around, like fluidly, for maybe a month. And then we found out where areas where people were crushing it. And those same areas, they were happy there. And now you have a satisfied employee who's crushing it, and they're able to see other areas of your shop and kind of build a career and an idea for themselves on how they see themselves in your shop. Yeah. One thing we also did, we changed our interview process a little bit to look for people that we can manage, right? To look at people as, can I give them direction? Am I comfortable with that? Because we've come across that where we have somebody and we like them, and that's okay, but when it comes to being their boss, right, like we felt that there was an obstacle there for whatever reason. So can we direct them? Are we comfortable directing them? How do they react when we ask them to do something? Just like very like obvious things, but you know, when it came down to it, we kind of decided that the people who are not ever going to leave our shop are us, right? We're going to be there day in and day out. So let's build this environment, and let's choose people who are going to listen to what we say, and not in a bad way, because we're going to listen to them too. But also identifying our management style, and that neither of us are super micromanagers, right? So we need people who are going to crush it without being micromanaged.
Well,
at the end of the day, they're not.
When you have something like a skill trade, like screen printing, it becomes a little bit more fragile too, right? Like it's sort of a tough ego sort of thing to you know, you want to bring on, let's take a printer for example, and you hire a printer that has a lot of experience. That's great until you realize that the printer isn't, maybe they're not doing as well of a job as you want from them. So now the second kind of barrier there is, do you have a personality with them where you're going to be comfortable going up to them and saying, hey, like I get that you've been printing for a long time, but this isn't good enough for our shop, or you know, this it's not fast enough for our shop, or there's you know some other aspect. And we had this backfire a couple of years ago too. Our office manager at the time, she was like not you know, she's not the most aggressive person. She's not a great micromanager. She's just a really nice person, and she's very organized. And we were hiring somebody basically to do Printavo, right? To like help enter in orders and process jobs. And me and her talked for a while. We decided we were going to hire somebody like extremely, what's it called? Like sort of submissive, right? We're like, we're going to get someone that we are totally comfortable just bossing around and whatever. And it's going to be, let's get someone like real weak. So we found that person, and it was horrible because every time there was a mistake or something, she was so fragile and so timid that anytime we confronted her about an issue, we felt bad. So we stopped confronting her about issues. And at the shop still, we still have, what, 4,000 shirts still or so, just mixed random shirts that she ordered wrong that like we just started accruing shirts forever, and because she would double order things and whatever. And so that, that didn't work out so well, but I think identifying if you're going to be, one thing I see a lot of, especially with kind of the younger people that we start hiring, is they talk back and get defensive a lot quicker. And when you own a business, you don't have to deal with that shit. Sometimes like you just have to say like, look, this isn't the way that it's done. I need you to change how you're doing it, do it differently, and don't take it personally, but you have to make a change going forward. Sometimes people get really, really defensive, and so so we've basically surrounded ourselves with people that have a little bit stronger personalities, people that we're all comfortable, speaking our minds, talking shit to each other, making sure that stuff's getting done, and that everybody understands what it is that we do. So we see that. What do we have next? Oh, okay. That's kind of.
So this is an actual thing that happened. We actually had our manager come to us and say, I don't want to train all these new people because it's taking up so much time, and I don't have time to train them. I need to do my job. So this is what we told them. What we don't train them and they stay.
Yeah, so this, we have a sales rep who is real profound. He kind of like told me this quote like blew my mind at the time, which is, so what if we train them and they quit? And then it's like, well, what if we don't and they stay? And it's true. Like you can't just assume that that people are going to stay or they're going to leave, right? So all you can do is kind of like create an atmosphere where when you bring new people on, we're able to give them the tools to succeed in the way that you need them to succeed, right? Like, I think someone, one of the speakers earlier was saying that, like, you'll have someone who's working, their full shift maybe, right? So, like, sometimes it's not as simple as being like, hey, you weren't working, because you'll have people there, 8 hours every day, but they're just not doing, what you need from them. And I think it took Erin and I a couple of years to kind of like realize our roles within the business, and what we went back to where we started, which is like I focus on marketing, I focus on kind of general operations, and Erin's our production manager, and it's how we grew our company. And we initially stepped back and we hired production managers, and we had an office manager, and our office manager now is our like special events manager, and our old production manager is he's back to being like a printer, and our shop is operating significantly better because of that. So I think realizing that sometimes you can't just hand off certain jobs is important too. But no, actually, well, so back a slide real quick is that because this is like a specifically geared towards printers, one thing that I think Erin does really well as a manager that helps is let the printers be craftsmen, right? So like, you can't take every printer that comes in your shop and constantly pick apart the way that they print, right? If someone comes in and they're pulling their prints and whatever, you go outside and you're like, no, you gotta push it, you gotta stand here, and you gotta do this. So like, I think what we try and do, what Erin does really well is kind of takes an observational approach, right? Let them work for a little bit. See the product, right? Like if they're making mistakes, that's one thing. If they're not making mistakes, but they're just maybe you would do it differently, let them do the job, or let them do the bulk of the job, and then maybe walk over to them and just say, hey, like, this is how I would do it, right? Just to give you another perspective. Because sometimes people will be like, oh wait, like that actually would make it go faster, or would make it so that I could print it easier. And sometimes it's not worth it, but it's really important that your printers feel like they're actually, you know, craftsmen. I think that's something that they identify themselves with, and I think people take a lot of pride in screen printing, and it's a manual, labor-intensive job, and I think it's berating to constantly pick them apart too. So you got to kind of find that line of respecting them and their, you know, abilities within the confines of what you want.
And I find that they need to, any person who's stepping up to the press or stepping up to any manual job, I think in general, needs to find, kind of map out their own process, and that the process is what's going to make them good at it, right? The order in which they do things, the more that they do it, now you start to talk about efficiency, right? If you're stepping up to the press and you're setting up a job in a different way every single time, you will never become efficient. You will never become efficient. So I talk to them about that. I say these are the things that you need to accomplish, right? Your screens need to be registered. You need to locate your inks. You need to stage your shirts. I'll talk to them about what needs to happen, and then I'll say, okay, now do it, and kind of watch what they do, right? And then we'll tweak that.
Yeah, but it's usually the wrong
and now we have very, very efficient printers, right? Because we've taken the process, we've taken their process, right? That what they already naturally started to do, and just refined it. And some of them do it very differently than the way I do it. A lot of them do it very differently than the way I do it, right? But I tell them that I'm going to respect your process, because I think it's important that this final product you can take ownership over. That you're responsible for what comes off of your press, and you're not going to feel responsibility towards it until you can own your own process. And that I think, I hope at least makes people who actually feel like masters of their craft, and not just like robots that just put on shirts all day long, right? Like, how do you motivate that person? Back to what Chris was saying, like, how do you give them incentives that are not based on money, right? There's a ceiling to what a printer can make, or what a print shop can pay a printer. And you want them to feel like at the end of the day, like, I did something besides just put on 1,000 or 2,000 shirts. Like, this gets old real fast, right? How do you motivate that person? And I find that just giving them, just as a gift, like ownership of their own process, of their own setups, and having respect for their process, and complimenting their process, and saying, that's really cool that you did it that way. I wouldn't have thought to do it that way, but it's efficient. You know, complimenting their efficiencies is kind of how I operate. But again, it was really a huge breakthrough for me, and a huge thing to realize that's how I had to manage people. That I cannot manage people from like a negative way. I do a ton of positive reinforcement. And that's how I operate. I need people who can operate well without, like a dictator, right? Because that's at the end of the day, that's not who I am, nor who I want to be, right? So, like, being the shop that I personally want to be in, like, that's what it is. It's a positive place. So, and some people I found do not work well with that at all.
So we can go to the next slide. So this kind of sticks with this theme too, which is you know, let your employees have a voice. Kind of let them be who they are, right? Like, you hired them for a reason, right? There was something about them, which is why you brought them here. So, like, these are things from our illustrator, and you know, for example, like, I'm not big on wrestling, right? Like, it's just not my scene. But the guy who does our illustrations, like, you know, he was working on like maybe an AdWord campaign, and that's like what he wanted to do, and it's like, sure, like, I have to step back sometimes and say, like, you know, there's everybody has different, you know, tastes, everyone has different opinions, and if I constantly take what he gives me and say no, he's gonna hate his job, right? And so, you know, we have our times where we say no, but there's also our times too where we're like, no, we got to let people run with it. And it's kind of the same with this too. We just launched a new website, liveprinting.com, and some of the branding on there was difficult because I think there was 5 of us involved in sort of like creating the website, and it's tough to make decisions when you have more than one person sometimes. And so I think that was for me something where I was like, okay, this isn't at all what I envisioned, but I'm just going to step back, and I made the suggestions that I felt like were crucial, but I kind of accepted the things that weren't ultimately a big deal, and because of that, now I have more people excited about it too, because they legitimately had a hand in helping us create it. So yeah, let's see what we got. Okay, so cross-training's huge. Cross-training is something that's really easy to forget about, right? Like you're busy, you just got to get a lot of shirts out. It's like, no, the printer's got to print, the catchers have to catch, all these shirts just have to get out of here. But it's gonna hurt you when later that week your printer doesn't show up, or the person in the darkroom is sick for a day. So these are things that are real easy to handle, or talk about in hypothetical scenarios, but we run into it all the time. And what we found is, kind of the more we cross-train, the more that other people discover that they like things maybe more than what they're doing. And like what we said earlier too, we start to find that there's better fits too. So moving people around the shop, it keeps them, it keeps everybody kind of knowing how to do different things, but it also kind of breaks down barriers. So where for us, at least from my standpoint, because I work on the marketing side, these both of these people here they work in the office, and for example, we just did double shifts for about 2 months, and we took Taylor, who does social media and marketing, and she basically she was loading a job. She loaded around 4,000 shirts every night, right? So she got her ass kicked. I mean, I remember the second day she was all crazy, her her ribs hurt and all this stuff, and it's she got hot, and we've had the girl who does our ordering, she was working on press, and she was pulling shirts, and she realized wait, I can't wear my shoes because otherwise they get covered in kind of fuzz and stuff, and she didn't like that. And what it did on our end is it makes it so that when I'm in the office, I'll listen to customer service talking to a customer, and they could talk about things I've heard them be no, I'm not going to waive the color change fee because it actually takes time to do that. I have to take the ink off the screen, and it's something that we have to do, and we need to charge for our time to do that. And it's a lot easier to stick up for those little things that in production that your customer wants to walk all over, when you've been in the back and actually done a color change yourself, or watched a bunch of discharge prints on purple and red shirts that don't work, right? And when you understand that, you've seen it with your own eyes, you can explain it better to a customer.
It works the opposite way too on my end. So when I talk to the production team about spoilage, right, which happens to all of us, I'll go over the spoilage for the week. This is what we messed up this week. Let's look at it. Let's face it. And what does it mean? It means that somebody in the office is getting yelled at. That's what it means, right? The people in the office are covering your ass right now. If you had to take that phone call, would you have still made that mistake, right? So we talk a lot about that, and it builds empathy in the shop. And I've noticed a lot that people are becoming less frustrated with other people not doing their job, right? That's a common thing you hear in any workplace, I think, so-and-so's just not doing their job, or, complaints that I hear from employees, and it's gone way, way down. Once we talk about what kind of jobs they're doing, then you step in and do their job. And another thing I like to say is, saying that that's not your job doesn't get shirts out the door. So that's the number one thing I don't ever want to hear, is it's not my job. It wasn't my job to catch the shirts. It wasn't my job. if nobody's standing there and doing it, if you can't find them, it is now your job for that moment in time, right?
So we do a lot of moving people around. You know, like yesterday, I don't think we answered the phones. Like I think everybody in the office was in production. Like it was just trying to get every order out that we could, and we, you know, it helps create a bond, and it helps people understand what each other's roles are. And I think like it's real easy to create like an us versus them mentality between, you know, someone doing sales and someone in production. One thing that I've been talking about with our printers that we're going to start implementing that we haven't done, and maybe some of the other shops here do this, is actually, you know, really having like a quota, or like how many jobs your printers are expected to do when they come in, right? Because so like to put this into perspective, like last week we had multiple days in a row where we got out like, you know, over 10,000 shirts. But our printers left at the end of the day feeling like it wasn't enough, right? They didn't do enough. And the reason they felt that way is because every time they finished a job, there's just another job. There's just another cart. And they keep coming, and it keeps coming. You see the loading dock, and you just see a bunch of boxes, and it's ungratifying, right? It just never ends. So I talked to a few printers about it, and I printed a lot lately too, and kind of had the same realization, which is like, I just want to know that I did a good job. And if I was supposed to do these 3 jobs, and I finished these 3, and now I do more, I could go home and say like, cool, I did all my jobs and I did more, right? Versus like, if I have 3 carts next to me and I leave at the end of the day and there's still 2 of those carts there, I had a bad day, right? And I think it's something that we just sort of realize because we're constantly just trying to push jobs out, that there really needs to be sort of like, this is what I'm expected to do, and I completed it. Now I feel okay with my day. So that's something we're really gonna work on. Slide. Okay, yeah, so this is focus not just on the jobs you want people to do, but also those that you don't want people to do. This is sort of one of those things where, again, like you hire people for certain positions, right? So if you have a printer and he's supposed to be at his press printing shirts, and then all of a sudden you see, you know, one of your printers standing at Reclaim, you know, cleaning off screens, or like we've even seen like a bunch of our printers standing and taping up screens. That sucks because anybody in the shop could put tape around a frame. Not everyone in the shop knows how to operate, you know, an automatic printing press. So what this led to is actually creating certain jobs that we didn't let people do, right? So I have printers who are not allowed to reclaim. They're not allowed to put tape on their screens. They're not allowed to go get their shirts, right? They could help another printer set up a print. They could, you know, if they need to like run and put ink on their screen, like there's plenty of things that they can do, right? But I don't need someone that maybe is making $18 or $19 an hour putting tape on a screen all day. That's not going to help us get stuff out. So I think that's something that we're working more and more on, is identifying like what people really, where they thrive, and then keeping them away from the things that like they just don't need to be messing with. You know, I mean, I could have 2 different people check in the orders for the day, and one of them will do it in an hour and a half, and one of them is going to do it in 8 hours. And we, like, this actually happened 2 days ago. We had a girl count in an order that was just around 1,000 pieces. And after she counted it in, she goes, "Oh, there's one missing." And I was like, "Okay, what size is missing?" She was like, "It was either a large or an extra large, I don't remember." What's the fucking point? You know, if you're gonna count in all the shirts, and that's your job, then count the shirts, right? And so, you know, I could have someone like that who's going to take all day to do it and still not even do it properly, right? Or like you find someone who you're like, wait, that person checked in the shirts and they did it in third of the amount of time, and you know, when the printers got their orders, everything was there and it looked good, and you know, so I want to make sure that that first person isn't doing that anymore. And kind of with our new model of hiring based on personalities, we say, okay, that person can't check in shirts, She can't print, she can't heat press, she can't answer the phone, she can't work here. You know, like at some point we got to be that. We're just really bad at firing people. So I heard Dom is going to call her. All right, cool. What do we got here? So I guess this is a little bit more on par with kind of like, you know, marketing and how you present yourself as a business, and you know, what we sort of we made kind of a conscious decision when we started being a print shop that we didn't want to be a really small print shop. We didn't want to be sort of like a heat press jersey shop. We never marketed towards baseball teams or basketball teams or schools or any of that stuff. We wanted to print things that we thought were cool, but we wanted to print a lot of them. So we kind of, you know, I guess it's that whole like fake it till you make it sort of mentality. You know, if you want to be a shop that's printing all discharge prints, don't fill your Instagram with, you know, all of your like plastisol prints. You know, like either start doing discharge prints like by yourself, or actually get jobs that are discharged, and focus on posting the things that are going to help you grow. So like I think there was a period of time where we only posted things that were like real like full color sim process type prints, and what we found is that we were not necessarily even attracting new customers, but we were taking our same customers that would order maybe 500 shirts, and they realized, wait, I don't have to do just like, you know, a one color print. I could do, you know, this full image on there. It's kind of the same thing with like this weekend's Pride, right? So like, you know, you post like one logo where it's a rainbow of the logo, right? Like Printavo logo, but it's a rainbow. You know, we had like 10 different companies yesterday all just do their logo as a rainbow, you know, and so what you put out there is gonna be a representation of what you want to come back to you. So, you know, at the same time, don't put out a bunch of stuff that you're not gonna be okay with. Yeah, was there more to that? Yeah, so this is kind of the same thing. I mean, this is like, we sort of targeted, you know, breweries. We went through a period of time where we really wanted, one thing we liked about breweries is they tend to do a lot of really cool beer labels, and so they also typically do pretty cool graphic shirts, you know, and so that was something that we enjoyed doing. I think I talked to one of our printers the other day about screen printing. I think it's one of those things where you reach a point where you print these full color jobs a lot, and you realize like you almost have the same amount of respect for a multicolor print as you can for a one color print. You know, and so one of the things me and him were talking about is, you know, I don't think either of us is necessarily super excited by any specific print anymore, but the overall just wanting to make the print look good for what it is. You know, even if it's a one color, and where we're at right now is we're printing thousands of one color prints on rubber jackets, but we're trying to do a good job at doing it. You know, we're not like shrugging. Every one of those jackets is probably $75 or something. Like they're, so, you know, I think the mentality shifted to not necessarily trying to get like as cool of jobs as we can, but just trying to do really good at the jobs that we can. Okay, so this is kind of like the bulk of, I guess, if our theme of creating a business that you want to work for is, you know, we teach classes, and there's some people here who have taken our classes, and we'll have, we've had people who, you know, during class they're constantly, well, like, how do you charge for this? Or like, how much, you know, like, how do you sell this? Or how do you get this customer? And if you go on a lot of these Facebook screen printing groups and things like that, there's tons of these questions too. Everybody's asking each other sort of how they run their shops. I think one thing that Erin and I kind of both are similar with is we try and avoid that. Like we try and not look at our competition. The only thing that we need to know about other shops is, to a certain extent, pricing, right? Because we need to know that we're not pricing ourselves out of being able to sell a job. And you start to learn that anyways, because you're going to price a job and someone's going to come back to you, even if it's a long-term customer, and they're going to say, hey, this place quoted me this, and you're going to look at it and say like, okay, either I'll do it or I won't do it. You know, you make a decision. So other than pricing, I think we both decided, we're going to tune out kind of the rest of. It's a big industry, and it's really easy to get overwhelmed when you start looking at, every shop does something their own way, and they all do like really cool things, and you could easily like look at all these different shops and get like overwhelmed or distracted or just take away from what it is that you want to do. So we've sort of we just focus on kind of like doing the stuff that we want to do. And some examples of that are like, when it was April Fools, we sent out like a newsletter that had like animals with logos on them, and we said that we offer animal branding now, and we had people who thought we were serious, and it was cool. But I think I have like a pretty horrible attention span, and so I just need to constantly do things that make me laugh or that I think are funny, and it's not necessarily good for like customers, but I just can't care. I think on Friday we had a basket of eggs in our front entry, and there was a drawing of how an egg travels through a chicken. It was disgusting, and we had all these people come in who were really like grossed out by it, but it was like, we thought it was funny every time a customer came in and thought it was gross. So, and maybe we're gonna lose certain customers that way, but who gives a shit? You gotta do things the way that you're gonna be happy with, otherwise why work for yourself? So kind of on par with that, there was a video we made last year, and we're just going to show that real quick, which had obviously like no marketing value or anything, but we got a kick out of it. So yeah. We're probably still going to crack up. We got no audio. I can narrate it.
Are you looking for custom shirts but just can't find the perfect spot? Hey, dog! Get off my lawn! At Apparel Maker, our shirts come to you fresh off the press, made to order.
So, I mean, yeah, I would say that rivals Dom's video for sure. It was almost as hard, but so I mean, stuff like that. Like, we got a big kick out of it. We thought it was really funny. Obviously, we got tons of orders from doing that. It was great, but yeah, but I think it's important if you're gonna be in this business. It's a really hard business to be in. There's a ton of competition. There's a lot of manual labor. It's hot. It's exhausting. So might as well like figure out little things that are gonna keep you, happy and entertaining. So that's all we got.
That's all we got.
If anyone has any questions about anything, we can do questions or not. Cool.
To keep it fun, like company-wide, you guys do anything like a retreat or just hang out?
That one's too hard. Sorry, my son told me like take a question and then just say that. So we didn't do a camping retreat, but we got mugs that say we did a camping retreat, and we gave those out.
That's a true story.
Yeah, so everyone has a mug for our camping retreat that they didn't go.
We throw a big Christmas party every year, which is good.
We do horse meat. The last Christmas party we labeled everything as horse meat, and it was like it was from like an Iranian place, and we had a lot of people who thought it was horse meat. No, we don't do retreats. We've had some parties. Usually people throw up on the everywhere.
Yeah, we've had some parties, karaoke parties. Yeah, we've talked about retreats actually, but we've never done it.
Yeah, we talk a lot. We've gone retreats. I mean, we try and bring like last. We've taken some people to like a trade show and make vacations out of it, which is usually anytime we take in from our shop anywhere, all they do is smoke pot the whole time. And it's like, I just feel, what's the point of that? So, but we're going to do that again probably in January for ISS. But yeah, retreat would be great. I'll go if you want to retreat. Like 25. So yeah, right now we've about 25 employees, and we're working a lot with the live printing. We're working with a lot more like contracted, basically just printers, or like promo people, just different people to help run the events. So those they're working as contractors. Cool.
I have a quick question. On the beer companies, we like working with these companies, like printing their stuff. Did you purposely target them, like by emailing or calling them, or how did?
Yeah. So what I typically do is try and find some sort of person that I know that's involved with something, right? So I started with like a local brewery where I knew the people and I printed their shirts, and I was like, hey, like, do you know any breweries? And then they knew some. And I think right now in Chicago we print for a lot of breweries, but I think we kind of hit, I think we just sort of got into a few at the right time, and a lot of them were sort of like all up and coming. And now, like, one of the breweries that we print for now, like Revolution Brewing, like it's a ton, it's crazy. So, but yeah, I mean, I think it's trying to leverage customers to get another customer, right? So if you print for a brewery and you have a good relationship with the person there, they probably know the person at the other brewery, and sometimes you'll get in, and sometimes you'll hit them up and they'll say, look, like, we're happy with where we're at. And we're not pushy. We're not a company that goes to that person says like we're gonna like try and steal them away from another company. Like typically, what I find though is most people that order shirts aren't crazy loyal. They tend to order shirts from one place to the next, or one person at a company might order shirts, and then the next year for the same event, it's going to be somebody else. So I think where there was like conversation earlier about CRMs and things like that, or that stuff's really important, so that like if this camp orders shirts in April, the lady that ordered last year might not be the same lady. So I know that come March, I got to be hitting them up and finding out like who's ordering and basically get the order all over again. But you know that someone there is going to order most likely. So I guess you're a good kid.
And ordering shirts is not usually somebody's job, right? It's usually a side note to their job. So they really appreciate it when you remind them, because it's usually not their main gig, right? They have a job, and then they're also happen to be responsible for ordering the shirts.
Yeah. That's actually something that blows my mind, is like how like sometimes you'll have like an intern ordering. Like, this is a truth. So we had an order from it was when the Cubs were not the World Series, but like right before in like the National League Championships. We did an order. It was a $68,000 order, and the person that placed it was like an intern. And like we were just like this person. It's crazy, like that someone. Like Erin said, it was literally like for them it wasn't a big deal. They just needed a bunch of shirts, they needed them quickly, and it was like a non-issue. But to us, it was like, well, it's this huge order, So you'd think that like it's going to be like the owner of the company or the head of marketing or this, but a lot of times it is just like an intern or an assistant to somebody. So, yeah. We good?
It's a quick question. What was the feeling of like separation, where you go from, hey, I'm printing on a silver press, and things are kind of all over the place. Like there's no order structure. It's like we're gonna get shit done, and then it's done. How did it feel to have to transition into like, man, we have people where everything has to be repeatable. We have to figure out these processes, and what kind of like benchmarks did you guys have to go through?
Felt horrible.
I feel like it's got to be like the biggest.
It's like being dragged through, like it's like being hit by a car and then just dragged for like 6 years. And that's how.
No, I mean, I would say that don't like if you're aware that some of that stuff needs to happen, that's like just be like, okay, let's take it one piece at a time. Like somebody was talking about breaking a task into manageable pieces. I think it was Sean. But this is super important, right? Because you can't standardize your whole shop in a day, right? So you just have to, usually looking at where your mistakes are happening the most and working back from there is what I do even now. And I don't think there's ever, in my experience, there's never a time where you're like, oh, we did it!
Yeah,
we're done, we made it to the finish line.
You're
You're just kind of, plowing through. And trying to accept the changes that are necessary to make the shop better, right? Like, and sometimes, like, you know, you'll go head to head with somebody in the shop, and then you'll be like, what's actually the best thing for the business, right? Because if the business doesn't succeed, none of us have jobs, right? We all are penniless. So just taking it like one step at a time. If you know, like if you find that, you know, like this week the white ink is looking like shit. Like just something simple like that. Like you walk by a white print 3 times that week and you're like, you know, it makes you cringe. Then Monday morning, you know, have a powwow, and like what I usually do is I make it less like instructional. So I'm not saying to people like, this is how I want you to do it, and if you don't do it this way, then I don't want you to work here, right? I never want people to feel like that. So I'll gather around a press, and we'll talk about in an open forum about the issue, whether it be ink coverage or whether it be what needs to go in the boxes, or how we're folding our shirts, or we're getting a lot of screens on press that have issues with them, like all of those tangible problems that we deal with every day. We're having some breakdown on our discharge white, or whatever the current issue is, like to powwow around that. And then my role in that is come out the other end of that conversation with a solution, right? So instead of leading the conversation, I will listen to the conversation and then say, so what I hear that we've all decided together is this. This is what we're gonna do. And then implement that. So I'm implementing what we all know is gonna be the solution, right?
I think what's important too is what someone said earlier, which is like if you have a group of people, that whole group isn't the leader, right? So like it's important that it's established that Erin's gonna make the decision. Everyone else can talk about what problems they're running into, right? Like maybe all the whites are bad because the guy in the dark room decided that instead of printing through 160s, we're gonna start printing through 180s, and no one really like discussed it, but like that mesh change made all of our whites worse, right? But what we don't want is like 5 people standing around all trying to make a decision, you know? And so it's important sometimes to like utilize like a time briefing, right? Like if you're gonna talk to like your printers about some issues, be like, we're gonna talk for 5 minutes and that's it. Because you could sit there and talk for 2 hours, and now you've like everybody chiming in trying to figure out how to solve things. You'd say like, we're gonna discuss it for 5 minutes, and then I'm gonna come back to you tomorrow with a solution. And that's sort of, I think identifying that not everybody there needs to make a decision, but we've also seen kind of like the flip side where we'll have, I wish Ryan was still here for this, but we'll have like our presses will be like not registering right, or like there'll be something with the, maybe the equipment not totally working right, but no one will say anything. So it'll be like all of a sudden, it's 4:30 on Friday, and we have to get this order out, and it's a 4-color job going on the manual, and they're like, oh, but the manual doesn't register. And you're like, what do you mean it doesn't register? I'm like, yeah, you can only do 1-color prints on the manual. And they're like, well, wait, like I need to know that because we could fix it, right? That's kind of the point in having a relationship with, a supplier, whoever you buy, a press from. Because if I get a press from Matt, right, TNJ, go TNJ. If I get a press from Matt though, and it doesn't register, I want to call him and be like, hey, like, am I missing something on the press, right? So, at the same time, you need like people who work in your shop to not necessarily feel like they're walking around making a bunch of decisions, but still to be able to speak up when something isn't working or something's wrong. Because otherwise you have a whole bunch of things, kind of going wrong with that. Cool.
Yeah. I think from what I saw on your website, you guys have 2 locations.
Yeah.
A sales office and how's that working out?
It's
good actually.
It worked out good yesterday because we had a lot of stuff going downtown. So we were in the city. We would have stayed in the city, but we had to get out of our space pretty quickly. We outgrew it. Honestly, we kind of had a shift where we outgrew it really quickly, and we really had to find something else. And we kept looking and looking in Chicago. We ultimately couldn't really find something quick enough in a neighborhood that really made any sense. So we kind of looked outside the city. It was, you know, newer buildings, bigger spaces, better lighting, just a lot more pros than cons. And so what we have now is basically we have a sales office. It's pretty small, but it's in a good location. We have a couple people who work out of there, like our illustrator works out of there like half the week. We have a sales guy who works out of there. We have a little showroom, and it works okay. We're not running production in multiple spots, which I think would be really hard. But yeah, I mean, I think sometimes it's confusing because we'll have like a customer who maybe wants to meet somebody there who doesn't work there. So like maybe the person they're talking to on the phone works at our location, not in the city, but they're like, oh, I want to meet Taylor in the city. And it's like, well, but Taylor doesn't work in the city, so you could meet with, you know, Zach. You know, but ultimately it's been fun. So, yeah. Yes.
What's your favorite feature of Printavo and what you hope?
I don't use the feature.
Or what's like I know everybody's talking about different apps and things, and I know you mentioned a couple. Like,
yeah.
What's the one that everybody should be using?
To me, it's the statuses throughout the workflow, right? Like the statuses, our whole workflow is built around statuses, right? So I get an order, and when I activate it to an invoice, right? Like I have ordering. They know now to check off and order the goods for that, and when, once she activates it to the next status, it goes to Art, and now he's making sure with the customer that it's done, and then the darkroom's only looking at his color to burn the screens, and our in production now they're only working off another color. They know when it's hit this color, the screens are there, the shirts are there. I think statuses is what we use more than anything. We used to use tasks and statuses. We kind of filtered out tasks just because typically if something's hitting that status, that task is being done. I mean, I think like everyone here, we'd probably all love to like, sit here and put Bruce here and be like, do this and this and this and this. But no, I mean, Printavo like has been it's been awesome for our workflow. I mean, it's really solid. But I think statuses, yeah. Cool. Don't really buy from